Chapter 1. The Awakening of Fire. There is a moment when silence becomes unbearable. Not the absence of noise, but the deafening void within. A quiet that echoes through the corridors of the soul. A stillness so profound it demands reckoning. That moment does not come gently. It tears through you like thunder cracking the spine of a mountain, like Prometheus stealing fire with defiant hands from the gods of Olympus. Not for rebellion, but for illumination. And in that moment, a question begins to flicker inside the furnace of your being. Who are you, really? Not the face in the mirror, not the echo of your upbringing, not the blueprint others drew on the skin of your name, but the force behind your eyes, the one watching the storm and wondering, is this all there is? You were not born to obey gravity alone. The ancients whispered it in forgotten tongues. Mystics carved it into sand with trembling fingers. Philosophers drowned in it, and physicists today dare to peer into its veil. There is something more. A hidden reality behind what we call real. A deeper truth behind your breath. A pulse that does not belong to flesh, but to consciousness itself. You are not a machine. You are not a number. You are not a random collection of atoms bouncing through an indifferent universe. You are awareness. And awareness bends reality. Look to the stars, and you will see the light of dead suns still traveling, still reaching you long after their fire has faded. What is more powerful than light echoing through time? Your perception. Because it is only when you choose to look that the light becomes real. Quantum mechanics has whispered what the mystics roared. Until consciousness observes it, reality does not exist. Read that again. Until you observe. Until you participate, the world remains in a fog of possibility, a superposition, neither this nor that. A wave, waiting to collapse into form. You collapse reality. You bring it into focus with the lens of your will. And the world rearranges. This is not poetry. This is not wishful thinking. This is physics. The double-slit experiment proved it. The observer effect screams it from the deepest chambers of quantum truth. Reality at its most fundamental level is not matter. It is mind. And so we begin with a challenge and a revelation. You are not living in a fixed world. You are the sculptor of the unseen clay. Carve this into the walls of your consciousness. Everything begins with perception. But perception is not passive, it is power. And yet most people live like sleepwalkers, trapped in inherited beliefs, staring through windows they never cleaned, drowning in narratives they never wrote. They are born into cages made of language. They inherit ideas like property, never questioning their origin, never seeking their truth. They say, "This is who I am." But what they mean is, "This is who I've been told to be." Your mind is not your own until you claim it. Edison did not believe in darkness. He lit the night not because the world gave him permission, but because his conviction outshone every failure. 10,000 attempts, 10,000 lessons. He did not see failure. He saw feedback. The greats did not accept reality. They sculpted it. Ford, laughed at for envisioning a world where automobiles replaced horses. Lincoln, doubted and diminished, stood when the nation was torn in two. Not because he knew he would succeed, but because he believed the vision was worth more than his comfort. And what of you? Will you continue drifting through the illusions of circumstance? Or will you become aware of the architect within? There is no neutral state. You are either building or decaying, growing or dying, awake or asleep. And sleep is seductive. It lulls you into habits. It whispers safety in repetition. It feeds you routine like narcotics, until the days blur, and you begin to forget that you were once wild with wonder. Remember this. You were not designed for smallness. The seed does not apologize for the forest it becomes. The eagle does not seek permission to soar. Neither should you shrink to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. And if they call you too much, remember, you were never meant to be little. The world does not need more deluded souls. It needs fire. It needs those who see through the veil, who understand that consciousness is not a side effect of matter, but the source of it. You are not the consequence of atoms. You are the cause behind them. You are the experiment and the experimenter, the dream and the dreamer. And yet, this is only the beginning. Before you can reshape the world, you must first reshape the lens through which you see it. Mindset is not motivation. Mindset is metamorphosis. Belief does not come from results. Belief creates results. The subconscious, that ancient engine beneath the surface, does not obey logic. It obeys repetition. It obeys identity. So if you walk around saying, "I'm not good enough," the universe, like a loyal servant, echoes back, "As you wish." If you say, "I'm not ready," your reality remains a mirror of hesitation. But dare to say, "I am becoming," and the quantum field responds. It reconfigures. It dances to the rhythm of your intention. This is not mysticism. This is the fusion of ancient philosophy and modern physics. This is the hidden truth behind prayer, meditation, focus, vision boards, affirmations, rituals. All the practices dismissed by the blind but understood by the awakened. They are not about magic. They are about coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions align, you create a frequency that reality cannot ignore. Einstein knew it. Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but receive it. This is not philosophy. This is physics. So ask yourself, what are you tuning into? What reality are you broadcasting with every thought? Are you operating from fear or from possibility? From memory or from imagination? Most live in loops. Reactions recycled. Emotions inherited. Patterns passed down like family heirlooms. But there is nothing noble in suffering the same fate as your ancestors. When you were born to break the chain, you do not honor the past by reliving its wounds. You honor it by healing them. The moment you wake up to this power, not just intellectually, but viscerally, emotionally, spiritually, you become dangerous to the status quo. And that is why the system distracts you. Why your feed is filled with noise. Why convenience has replaced curiosity. Why dopamine rules while discipline fades. Because if you ever realized who you really are, the world would quake. But this chapter is your spark. This is the beginning of remembering. Not learning, remembering. Because deep within you, beneath the opinions, the judgments, the masks, you already know. You know that the world is not solid. You know that your thoughts ripple into reality. You know that time is not a straight line. That your intuition is more ancient than language. And that the still, small voice inside you is more real than anything they ever told you. You've just forgotten. And forgetting was part of the journey. The fall is what makes the rise sacred. For now, you remember. You are consciousness. You are observer and creator. You are the wave and the collapse. You are stardust with intention. And this is just the beginning of fire. Chapter 2. The Machinery of Belief. There is a machinery within you that few ever understand, let alone master. It does not run on gears or wires or software, but on something far more elusive and far more powerful, belief. Before there is thought, before there is action, before there is even language, there is belief. The silent architect building your perception of reality, laying down the tracks upon which your entire life will travel. Most people never question this machinery. They never open it, never rewire it, never examine where its parts came from or who installed them. They go on living inside of it as if it were truth, when in fact it is nothing more than an inherited framework, a map drawn by someone else's hand. You were not born with limitations. You were born into them. From the moment you took your first breath, the world began whispering stories into your subconscious. What you could do, what you couldn't do, who you were, who you weren't, what you were supposed to become, and what would happen if you tried to become anything else. These stories became your programming. They became the glass walls of your mental cage, invisible, but absolute. And here lies the tragedy. Most people never realize that the walls are not real. They mistake belief for truth. But belief is not truth. Belief is agreement. And if you agreed to a life of limitation, you can just as powerfully unmake that agreement. We were raised in a world that worships evidence and dismisses imagination. I'll believe it when I see it, they say. But the truth is, you will only ever see what you believe is possible. Your mind is not an open lens. It is a filtering device. It filters reality through the beliefs it already holds. And this is not just psychological, this is neurological. Your brain physically deletes billions of bits of sensory data every second, because it cannot process everything. So what does it keep? What does it choose to show you? Only what aligns with the reality you already accept. That is why two people can walk into the same room and live entirely different experiences, not because the room is different, but because the observer is. The man who sees opportunity sees it because his mind is tuned to it. The woman who sees only danger sees it because her nervous system has been trained by years of pain. And the person who believes they are doomed, that the world is against them, that they are cursed, that they were born unlucky, that person will encounter endless confirmation of their prophecy, not because the prophecy was true, but because their belief summoned it into form. They did not attract it like some magical incantation. They filtered reality down to only what supported the lens they refused to change. Your beliefs are a quantum instruction set. They don't just shape how you see the world. They shape how the world responds to you. And it begins with energy, not in the abstract, spiritual sense, but in the measurable, physiological truth of your body. When you believe in your power, your body aligns. Your posture shifts. Your voice resonates. Your presence deepens. Your decisions become bold, not because you're acting, but because belief has changed your inner chemistry. The hormones you release are different. The micro-expressions you show are different. And people respond to that. The world responds to that. Opportunity seems to notice you. Doors that were closed begin to open, not because they magically appeared, but because belief tuned you into the frequency where those doors already existed. Think of Henry Ford, a man with no formal education, no connections, and no resources by conventional standards. He was mocked, ridiculed, dismissed. The world didn't need another automobile, they told him. Horse carriages were the future. The infrastructure, the roads, the materials, it wasn't possible. But Ford didn't ask the world what it believed. He imposed his belief on the world. He acted with such unwavering certainty that the impossible began to bend. He didn't wait for proof. His belief was the proof. And once reality was forced to comply, the rest of the world looked back and called him a genius, forgetting that before he was a genius, he was simply a man who refused to let doubt write his future. And what of Walt Disney? Fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination, bankrupt before Disneyland even broke ground, ridiculed for believing that an amusement park could be more than cheap rides and cotton candy. He dreamed of a world that didn't exist, then built it piece by piece from the bricks of his unshakable belief. If you can dream it, you can do it, he said, and he didn't mean that as a slogan. He meant it as a law of reality. Dreaming is not idle fantasy. Dreaming is quantum alignment. Dreaming is the blueprint of belief. But belief requires more than hope. It requires conviction, that kind of defiant inner knowing that does not tremble in the face of evidence, because it knows that evidence will soon follow. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. This is the state of mind from which history is shaped. Abraham Lincoln, alone in a nation tearing itself apart, was not guided by public approval. He was guided by an internal compass forged in suffering, a belief in the dignity of humanity that no war, no opposition, and no threat of death could dismantle. He believed in something larger than himself, and that belief reshaped the course of an entire continent. But here is the part they do not teach in schools or quote in speeches: belief is not easy. Belief will be tested. When you decide to change your internal story, the external world does not congratulate you. It challenges you. It throws everything it can at you, not to punish you, but to see if you are serious. It is not enough to say you believe. You must prove it through action, through repetition, through refusal to break. Belief must be embodied. It must be etched into your nervous system, into your cells, into your choices. It must become not something you do, but who you are. You cannot simply think your way into a new life. You must act, even when the old beliefs scream for survival. Because they will. They will beg. They will whisper, "You can't." They will tell you that comfort is safety, that risk is danger, that change is impossible. But they are liars. They are echoes of an old self that no longer fits. They are ghosts, and you are the exorcist. Belief is the fire that burns the past. It is the hammer that breaks the mold. It is the lens that refracts the infinite quantum field of possibility into one lived reality, yours. And you must guard it like a sacred flame. Because if you do not choose your beliefs, someone else will. And they will not choose them in your favor. Look around. Every institution, every system, every algorithm is designed to program belief. Schools reward memorization over questioning. Media trains your focus on fear. Culture teaches you who you're allowed to be, and punishes divergence with shame. And so people comply. They believe what is safe to believe. They do not dream past what they are told is reasonable. They do not question the map, even when the map leads them in circles. Chapter 3. The Vision Beyond the Veil. Vision is not eyesight. It is not the ability to see what is already in front of you. That is observation. That is surface. Vision is something entirely different. It is the capacity to perceive what does not yet exist, to hold in your mind an image of a world that has never been, and to believe in it so completely that you begin to move toward it before anyone else can see what you're walking toward. Vision is the blueprint of transformation. It is the bridge between the invisible and the inevitable. To possess true vision is to stand at the edge of the known and stare into the infinite unknown, not with fear, but with hunger. It is to look at the current state of your life, your mind, your circumstances, and then, with deliberate defiance, say, "This is not the end of my story." Most people never reach that point. They become prisoners of the present, trapped in the immediacy of their problems, the suffocating weight of routine, the inertia of habit. They do not lack potential. They lack vision. Because vision requires imagination, and imagination is dangerous to a world that profits from your predictability. The modern world does not reward visionaries until they succeed, and even then, it only celebrates them in retrospect. Before their success, they are called delusional, irrational, dreamers, fools. But every great leap in human history, every disruption, every revolution, every renaissance began with a person who chose to believe in what was unseen. The Wright brothers did not merely want to fly. They saw it. They saw flight as a certainty in a time when the idea of a flying machine was considered science fiction. While the world laughed, they built. While the world doubted, they studied. And when their machine finally rose from the ground, gravity lost one of its oldest battles. Visionaries are not born. They are forged, through solitude, through silence, through that sacred discomfort of knowing you are meant for something more, even when you cannot prove it to anyone, not even yourself. The vision begins as a whisper. It does not scream. It does not plead. It simply asks, what if? What if you were capable of more than what your past has shown you? What if the limits you've accepted are not walls, but illusions, lines drawn in chalk on the floor of a dream you haven't dared to wake up from? And here's the truth that shakes the foundations of those who dare to internalize it. Your brain does not know the difference between a vividly imagined future and an experienced reality. Neurologically, it processes both as real. That means every time you hold your vision in your mind with clarity, with emotion, with repetition, you are rewiring your neural circuits. You are preparing your body, your instincts, your perception to move toward that imagined future as if it were already here. This is not fantasy. This is neuroplasticity. This is science. The mind rehearses and the body follows. You become what you repeatedly envision. But vision is not a comfort. It is a burden, a sacred one. Because once you begin to see, truly see, you can no longer pretend to be blind. You can no longer indulge in mediocrity. You can no longer claim ignorance as an excuse. Vision demands responsibility. It demands discipline. It demands the willingness to walk alone, to be misunderstood, to hold fast to your direction even when the world around you tells you to turn back. And it will tell you to turn back. It always does. Because vision threatens the status quo. It disrupts the consensus reality that others are comfortable in. Clarity is the fire that purifies vision. A vague dream is a fantasy, but a clear vision becomes a command to the universe. Clarity allows you to filter distraction. It cuts through noise. It says no with precision because it knows what it is saying yes to. Most people wander through life accumulating things, titles, possessions, distractions, but never a clear sense of why they do what they do. They wake up tired, they work without purpose, they chase dopamine, they collapse into sleep only to repeat the cycle. Not because they are weak, not because they are broken, but because they have never been taught to see beyond the veil. And the veil is everywhere. It's in the language you use, the systems you operate within, the stories you're told. The veil says, play it safe. It says, be realistic. It says, don't get your hopes up. But who defines realism? Whose reality are you being asked to conform to? The truth is, most people's idea of reality is simply an accumulation of fears dressed up as logic. But fear is not logic. Fear is memory. Fear is history trying to dictate the future. Vision refuses to bow to fear. Vision reaches forward into possibility and says, I will not be governed by ghosts. Vision is not reactive. It is generative. It doesn't ask for permission. It creates momentum. It creates identity. When you hold a clear and emotionally charged vision of who you want to become, you start making decisions from that future identity, not from your past wounds. You eat differently. You speak differently. You choose your environment differently. You guard your time like it is sacred. You walk with a sense of inevitability. And others feel it. Because vision creates an energetic signature. It announces itself. It does not need to be explained. It is felt. Nikola Tesla saw an electrified world when candles still lit most homes. He saw the earth as a conductor, the air itself as a highway for wireless energy. People thought he was mad. And maybe he was, but if madness means refusing to accept the limitations of the current paradigm, then every genius who ever walked this earth was mad. And maybe you need a little madness too. Maybe the part of you that feels restless, that feels like you are not where you're meant to be, is not dysfunction. Maybe it is vision trying to break through the fog. But here's the warning. Vision without execution is hallucination. You cannot afford to live in dreams. You must translate them into structure. You must reverse engineer your vision into plans, your plans into habits, your habits into non-negotiable actions. The vision must become a system. The higher your vision, the deeper your roots must go. You cannot reach for the stars while refusing to plant your feet in discipline. You cannot manifest a future your nervous system is not prepared to hold. This is where most people fail. They glimpse the vision, but they do not fortify the vessel. They try to leap into a new identity without doing the hard inner work of transforming the old one. Vision is not a painting you stare at. It is a force you surrender to. It pulls you. It stretches you. It breaks you open so it can rebuild you stronger. And you must be willing. Willing to change your environment. Willing to shed relationships that diminish you. Willing to let go of everything that no longer aligns with where you're going. Because the weight of your old life will strangle your new one if you let it. And let me be clear, this journey is not gentle. It is not glamorous. Vision is not convenient. But it is worth everything. Because once you cross over, once you begin to see the world not as it is, but as it could be, you can never go back to sleep. You become a threat to complacency. You become a weapon against mediocrity. And the world begins to change. Not because it changed first, but because you did. Chapter 4. Purpose as a weapon. Purpose is not a luxury. It is not a hobby to be explored on weekends. It is not something you stumble upon in your spare time or chase like a butterfly in a meadow of wishes. Purpose is not some ethereal muse that chooses the lucky few while the rest settle for survival. Purpose is war. It is weaponry. It is the single most powerful force that can awaken a human being from a state of psychological death. And the longer you live without it, the more your soul begins to rot inside a body that moves but does not live. You were not built for 9-to-5 sedation and digital pacifiers. You were not placed on this earth to simply pay bills, scroll endlessly, and drift through a sea of distractions until the light goes out. If your days feel empty, if your victories taste stale, if your heart has grown quiet and the fire you once had has turned to ash, it is not because life has betrayed you, it is because you have not yet made the decision to live with purpose. And purpose is a decision. It is not discovered. It is declared. You choose your purpose. You forge it in the furnace of conviction. You carve it from the raw stone of your pain, your passion, your story. You create it through conscious alignment, through daily intention, and through the brutal honesty required to admit what actually sets your soul on fire. You do not wait for permission. You do not beg the universe to reveal your destiny as if it were hidden in some sacred scroll. You get quiet, brutally quiet, and ask yourself the one question most people never ask because they are terrified of the answer. What would I do with my life if I stopped lying to myself? Purpose is not found in comfort. It is not born in convenience. It is forged in the depths of struggle, in the wounds that life tried to use to break you, and which you instead turn into weapons of clarity. Your purpose is often hidden behind the very thing you've been trying to escape: your trauma, your insecurities, your failures, your shame. But the paradox is this: when you stop running and start confronting, those dark parts of your past stop being weights around your ankles and become fuel for the fire ahead. Look at those who changed the world, not in theory, but in the brutal, blood-stained trenches of reality. Look at Nelson Mandela, locked in a cell for 27 years, stripped of freedom, reduced to a number by a system designed to crush his identity. He did not lose purpose. He found it there. He found a reason to rise beyond his suffering. He sharpened his resolve with every passing year until he walked out not as a broken man, but as a living embodiment of what conviction can do to history. That is what purpose does. It elevates suffering into strategy. It alchemizes injustice into legacy. And look at Malala Yousafzai, a child who had the audacity to believe that girls should learn. Shot in the head by men who feared the power of a mind awakened, she could have chosen silence. But purpose roared louder than fear. She became a global symbol, not because she wanted fame, but because her belief in her purpose was more powerful than her belief in her pain. That's what separates those who rise from those who decay. Not talent, not luck, not timing, but the decision to matter. Purpose is not some abstract dream. It is practical. It gives you a reason to get up when everything feels meaningless. It gives your suffering context. It takes your emotions, your grief, your rage, your heartbreak, and gives them a battlefield to fight on. Without purpose, pain becomes poison. With purpose, pain becomes fuel. Purpose does not remove hardship. It gives hardship a reason. It reframes the struggle as preparation, not punishment. But understand this: purpose will cost you. It will cost you your excuses. It will cost you your distractions. It will cost you your victimhood. You cannot hold on to smallness while trying to grasp the magnitude of who you are meant to become. Purpose will demand the death of your comfort zone. It will require that you let go of people who want you to stay average so they don't have to confront their own reflection. It will call you into the wilderness, not once, but constantly, and ask if you're willing to walk without applause, without guarantees, without evidence, just conviction. And that conviction must come from within. Because the world will not always affirm your path. It will challenge it. It will mock it. It will throw obstacles in your way to see if you truly mean what you say. Purpose is not proven in vision boards and inspiration quotes. It is proven in whether or not you continue when everything is silent, when the applause stops, when the external rewards disappear. That's when you know it's real, when the fire continues to burn in solitude. You must become ruthless about your purpose. You must defend it from distraction like it is sacred, because it is. Every moment you spend disconnected from your purpose is a moment spent building someone else's dream, serving someone else's system, fulfilling someone else's script. The world is full of people who gave up on their purpose and now spend their lives criticizing those who haven't. Don't become one of them. Protect your purpose with the ferocity of a warrior who knows the battlefield is not out there. It is between your ears. You may not have all the answers. You may not have the map. But you do not need the entire path. You only need one reason to begin. You only need to remember that the greatest weapon you have in a distracted, disoriented world is a mind that is anchored in purpose. When you know why you're here, truly, fiercely know, nothing can move you off your path. Not rejection, not failure, not betrayal, because those things no longer define you. They become tools. They become teachers. They become background noise compared to the signal of your mission. So what will you fight for? What will you bleed for? What will you give your life to, not in a single moment of glory, but in the quiet discipline of day after day, choice after choice, breath after breath? Because purpose is not found in grand gestures. It is found in the mundane, in how you spend your hours, what you focus on, who you surround yourself with, how you respond to adversity. Purpose is not the moment on stage. It is the decision to keep building when no one is watching. And maybe that's the hidden truth, that purpose isn't something out there waiting for you. It's already inside. It's the part of you that won't shut up. The part that feels like restlessness, like longing, like hunger. The part of you that is sick of pretending to be fine with mediocrity. You don't need to find it. You need to listen to it. You need to stop numbing it, stop silencing it, stop delaying it. It has always been there. And now it's time to stop negotiating with a life that keeps you from it. Because when you live with purpose, you are no longer a passive observer of reality. You become a force of nature. You stop reacting to the world and start shaping it. You stop existing and start leading. You stop settling and start creating. You are no longer moved by the winds of other people's opinions because you are the storm. You are the signal. You are the reason. You are the purpose. Chapter 5. Discipline as Destiny. Discipline is not punishment. It is not sacrifice. It is not a cage or a limitation or a rejection of pleasure. Discipline is the purest form of self-respect. It is the daily act of aligning your behavior with your vision. It is the bridge between the person you are and the person you could be. It is not always loud or visible or heroic. Most of the time, it is boring, repetitive, thankless. It is the choice to keep showing up long after the mood has passed. It is the quiet rebellion against the gravity of mediocrity. And most people never understand this because they associate discipline with deprivation, when in fact, discipline is liberation. There is no greatness without discipline. There is no sustained success, no transformation, no reinvention, no embodiment of purpose without it. Discipline is the architecture of freedom. It is what builds the internal infrastructure to withstand pressure, to hold the weight of ambition, to endure the silence between effort and result. In a world addicted to speed, convenience, and stimulation, discipline is the ultimate form of defiance. Because it says, I will not be controlled by my impulses. I will not be ruled by what feels good right now. I will not trade long-term meaning for short-term relief. You cannot create a new life on willpower alone. Willpower is a spark. Discipline is the engine. Willpower may get you started, but it is fragile, easily broken by fatigue, emotion, distraction. Discipline is what carries you when motivation disappears. It is the code you live by when no one is watching. It is the contracts you make with yourself in silence and keep even when the world is offering every excuse to stop. The gym before sunrise. The studying after midnight. The saying no to things that steal your focus. These are not acts of suffering. These are acts of devotion. Not to the external world, but to your own evolution. Most people fail not because they lack dreams, but because they lack the ability to submit to the process. They want the results, but not the routine. They want the outcome, but not the obedience to the mundane. They are seduced by the fantasy of transformation, but allergic to the repetition required to build it. And yet everything that lasts, everything real, everything worthy, is built on repetition. Mastery is not a moment of genius. It is a long series of disciplined actions performed long after they become boring. That's where the transformation happens. Not in the beginning, not at the peak, but in the middle. In the grind. In the unseen days where nothing changes on the surface, but everything is shifting underneath. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb because he was smarter than everyone else. He succeeded because he refused to quit. 10,000 failed experiments. 10,000 iterations. 10,000 days of looking like a madman to those who did not understand the discipline behind genius. He did not fail 10,000 times. He succeeded in discovering 10,000 ways that didn't work. That is discipline, the willingness to persist without reward, to keep chiseling away when there is no applause, no external validation, no instant gratification. Because somewhere inside you, there is a knowing that the repetition is making you into something more. It is sharpening your edge. It is testing your commitment. It is preparing you for the moment when everything will finally converge, not by accident, but because you earned it. Discipline is not about controlling life. It is about controlling yourself in the chaos of life. It is the internal order you bring to external unpredictability. The rituals that ground you. The structure that protects your energy. The standards that you refuse to lower, no matter what the world offers you in exchange. Without discipline, potential dies. It rots in excuses. It suffocates in procrastination. And there is no pain worse than knowing that your best self is buried underneath the weight of your own avoidance. People wait for clarity before they act. But discipline creates clarity. People wait for energy before they move. But discipline generates energy. People wait for the perfect moment. But discipline makes the moment. It doesn't wait for the environment to be ideal. It creates momentum in spite of the environment. It turns chaos into order, ideas into habits, and vision into embodiment. And once you start to live with that level of structure, you begin to feel a power most people have never tasted. The power of being in command of your own time, your own mind, your own behavior. And yes, it's lonely. Discipline separates you. It isolates you from the masses because the masses are governed by comfort. They are led by the next dopamine hit, the next convenience, the next excuse. Discipline is the discipline to say no, not just to others, but to yourself. To the version of you that wants to sleep in, that wants to coast, that wants to avoid. Discipline is what brings you face to face with the weaker versions of you and forces a confrontation. And in that confrontation, you either level up or you bow down. But once discipline becomes identity, not just a practice, but who you are, everything changes. You begin to trust yourself. And that is rare. Because most people cannot trust themselves to follow through. They say things they don't mean. They make promises to themselves they constantly break. But when discipline becomes your default, your integrity becomes indestructible. And the world responds to that. People trust you. Opportunities find you. Not because of what you say, but because of who you've become. You no longer need to prove your worth. Your presence does the talking. Think of the greats. Not the celebrities. Not the influencers. The actual greats. The ones who built empires, reshaped industries, carried nations on their backs. Think of Carnegie, a man who started with nothing, worked 12-hour shifts as a child, and built a steel empire because his discipline was relentless. Think of Churchill, whose unwavering discipline held a fractured world together during the darkest nights of war. Think of Da Vinci, whose notebooks, filled with meticulous detail and obsessive curiosity, show a level of discipline most modern minds cannot fathom. These people were not superhuman. They were obsessed. And their obsession was structured. So the question is not, can I do this? The question is, will I become the kind of person who does this no matter what? Will you keep writing when no one is reading? Will you keep training when no one is watching? Will you keep showing up for your future self even when the current self is exhausted, frustrated, and alone? Because that is the threshold, the border between who you are and who you are becoming. Most turn back at that border. But those who cross it, they become legends, not because of the moment, but because of the method. Not because of a breakthrough, but because of brutal, beautiful discipline. So if you want freedom, real freedom, the kind that cannot be taken away, stop chasing it and start building the structure that makes it possible. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you write a new line in the script of your future. You train your nervous system to hold a greater reality. You move closer to a life not controlled by chaos, but created by you, deliberately, daily, and without apology. Because discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It is its source. And without it, nothing great can be sustained. Chapter 6: The Sacred Art of Action. Action is the point where philosophy becomes embodiment, where dreams leave the realm of imagination and enter the harsh, unyielding gravity of the physical world. Ideas alone are powerless. Potential is inert. No matter how brilliant your mind, how compelling your vision, how sacred your purpose, if it is not translated into action, it dies with you. Action is the alchemy that turns belief into becoming. It is the single most honest expression of who you are. Not what you say, not what you intend, what you do, consistently, relentlessly, unflinchingly. We live in a culture obsessed with consumption. People gorge on information, read endless books, watch endless motivational videos, listen to hours of podcasts, accumulate knowledge like it's currency, and yet they remain stagnant, paralyzed by the illusion of progress. Knowing is not enough. Knowing is the trap. Knowing gives the illusion of movement, but movement only exists in action. Nothing changes until you do something with what you know. Nothing becomes real until it is anchored in behavior. This is the hard truth that separates the dreamers from the doers, the thinkers from the builders, the passive from the powerful. Most people wait. They wait for clarity, for timing, for permission, for the perfect conditions. They say, "I'm just not ready." But readiness is a myth. No one is ever fully ready to leap into the unknown. The path is never fully lit. Certainty is an illusion that lives just beyond the edge of comfort, and it will always stay there unless you decide to move forward anyway. Action is what creates clarity. Action is what reveals the path. You cannot think your way into transformation. You have to move. You have to step into the storm before you understand how to navigate it. Courage does not precede action, it is born from it. And yet, action in today's world has been hijacked by chaos. People confuse busyness with purpose. They chase productivity metrics like addicts: more emails, more meetings, more tasks, more dopamine. But not all motion is progress. Not all movement is growth. If your actions are not aligned with your vision, your purpose, your values, then you are simply burning energy in service of distraction. Real action is not reactive. It is not about staying busy. It is intentional, deliberate, focused like a scalpel, not scattered like shrapnel. This is where the sacred nature of action comes in. It is not just about doing for the sake of doing. It is about aligning your daily behavior with the future you are committed to building. Sacred action is disciplined, not frantic. It is measured, not rushed. It is rooted in awareness. You wake up and you ask, what action today brings me closer to who I am becoming? And then, regardless of whether you feel like it or not, you take that action. That is where power begins to compound. Not in the big, dramatic moves once a year, but in the small, precise, consistent actions taken every day, even when no one notices. Action does not wait for passion. It creates passion. This is what most people misunderstand. They think they need to feel inspired in order to move. They believe that passion is the fire that drives the engine. But it's the other way around. Passion follows action. You begin clumsily, awkwardly, without grace, and in the repetition, the discipline, the progress, you ignite a flame. Purpose deepens not when you find the perfect thing to do, but when you commit fully to doing, period. Movement awakens meaning. Stagnation kills it. Every great creator, every innovator, every leader in history, from Da Vinci to Jobs, from Mandela to Musk, understood this principle. They did not wait to be inspired. They did not consult the crowd. They simply moved. They made things. They failed. They iterated. They evolved. But they kept acting. Edison didn't discover electricity with theory. He discovered it through experimentation, through messy, repetitive, disciplined action. He got his hands dirty. He blew things up. He tried again. Because he knew, the answers are not found in the mind, they are revealed in the process. And yes, action will expose you. It will expose your insecurities. It will make you confront everything you've been avoiding. It will shatter the illusion of safety that comfort provides. When you move forward towards something that actually matters, resistance will rise. You will feel fear. You will doubt yourself. You will want to run. And that is precisely the moment you must keep going. Because action is not just physical movement. It is spiritual war. It is the battle between the self you've been and the self you are trying to become. You cannot become that new self without taking new actions. Your identity is not fixed. It is shaped by what you consistently do. Every time you take an action aligned with your vision, you reinforce the architecture of that new identity. You teach your nervous system a new truth. You expand what you believe is possible, not by thinking about it, but by proving it. And the more you act, the more the world begins to shift in response. Doors open. People appear. Opportunities converge. Not because you waited for them, but because you moved in their direction. And the final truth, the one few are willing to accept, is this: you are always taking action. Even in inaction. Even in procrastination. Even in delay. Every moment you choose not to act, you are acting in service of your current identity. So the question is never, am I acting? The question is, what am I reinforcing through my actions right now? Are you reinforcing courage or fear? Growth or stagnation? Alignment or avoidance? There is no neutral ground. You are always voting with your behavior, for who you are, and for who you are becoming. So stop waiting. Stop planning endlessly. Stop consuming without creating. Stop worshiping information and start worshiping embodiment. Action is sacred not because it's flashy, but because it is honest. It shows you who you are, without filters or delusion. And if you don't like what it shows you, good. That means you're awake. That means you have the power to choose differently, starting now. Because every new future begins with one action. Not one insight. One move. And then another. And then another. That's how momentum is built. That's how empires are built. That's how new worlds are born, not in the mind, but in the arena. And you, right now, have a choice. Stay in the stands, analyzing, criticizing, hoping, or step into the ring and begin. Not tomorrow. Not when it's easy. Chapter 7. Gratitude as Frequency. Gratitude is not a polite emotion. It is not a thank you card. It is not a passive nicety reserved for holidays and moments of convenience. Gratitude, when understood at its deepest level, is one of the most powerful energetic tools available to the human mind. It is not about being thankful after things happen. It is about activating a frequency, a vibrational state, that literally alters your interaction with reality. Gratitude is not a reaction. It is a creation, a choice, a declaration. It is the conscious tuning of your nervous system to abundance, even when your eyes tell you a story of lack. In the quantum field, everything exists as probability. Every possible version of you, every potential future, is already encoded in the energetic field. And what determines which future collapses into your lived experience is not your circumstances, but your consciousness. More specifically, the emotional frequency of your consciousness. Gratitude is one of the highest frequencies a human can generate. When you operate from gratitude, you are not waiting for life to prove itself to you. You are affirming to life that you already see the gift, and because you see it, it multiplies. What you focus on expands. What you appreciate grows. And gratitude is the mechanism by which you instruct the universe to deliver more of what is aligned with that energy. This is not metaphor. This is measurable. Gratitude changes your physiology. It reduces cortisol, improves heart coherence, alters brainwave patterns, boosts immune function. It synchronizes your emotional and physical systems. But beyond biology, it does something even more important. It unlocks the doorway to transformation because it shifts your perception instantly. In an instant, gratitude pulls you out of survival mode and puts you into creation mode. And that change in perception, that shift in state, is where all power begins. Most people are blind to the abundance in their lives because they are addicted to the emotional chemistry of stress. They've built neural pathways so deeply wired into complaint, into frustration, into longing, that even when beauty surrounds them, they cannot feel it. It's not that they don't have anything to be grateful for. It's that their nervous system has forgotten how to feel it. They're looking for the next thing, the next solution, the next fix. Gratitude in its true form breaks that loop. It says, I have already received. I already am. And in that moment, you stop chasing. You stop begging. You start aligning. But here's the truth that most people never face. Gratitude is hardest when you need it most. It is not difficult to be grateful when life is flowing, when the bank account is full, when love surrounds you. The real test is whether you can choose gratitude in the storm. Can you look at your struggle and thank it? Can you face your own pain, your own disappointment, your own failure, and still find something sacred within it? Because if you can, then you have unlocked something few ever do, the ability to transmute adversity into evolution. Gratitude is not weakness. It is not soft. It is not about tolerating injustice or pretending everything is fine. It is about finding power even in the places where others collapse. It is the radical act of saying, I will not let circumstances define my state. I will not give the external world permission to dictate my internal frequency. I choose to be the cause, not the effect. And in choosing that, you reclaim the throne of your mind. Some of the strongest people in history embodied this principle without ever using the word gratitude. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Nazi concentration camps, found meaning in suffering so profound that it gave birth to an entire branch of psychology. He wrote about the last human freedom, the freedom to choose your attitude in any given circumstance. He described men who had lost everything, stripped of identity, dignity, family, and yet chose to be kind, to help others, to find beauty in a sunrise behind barbed wire. That was gratitude in its purest, most powerful form, the refusal to let darkness define the light within. And this is what modern people have forgotten. That gratitude is not a reaction to privilege. It is a portal to perspective. When you practice it daily, not once a year, not when things go well, but as a discipline, as a ritual, you begin to rewire your perception of life itself. You begin to see differently. You begin to experience the same moments through a radically new lens. You begin to generate the state that you used to chase through achievement. You stop saying, I'll be grateful when, and start living from the truth that you can be grateful now, because now is all you ever truly have. Gratitude is the answer to the ego's addiction to deficiency. The ego lives in the story of what's missing, what's lacking, what's wrong. And it will always find something. But the soul lives in the now. The soul lives in the full. It doesn't ignore pain, it integrates it. It says, even this has value. Even this teaches. Even this can become sacred if I choose to see it that way. Gratitude is the bridge between those two worlds, the one where you're always wanting more, and the one where you realize you already are more than enough. And make no mistake, gratitude as frequency changes the way reality responds to you. Not in some mystical law of attraction, soundbite, but in tangible, observable patterns. You begin to notice opportunities you used to overlook. You begin to attract people who vibrate at the same level. You stop repelling what you want with desperation and start magnetizing it through coherence. Because desperation is resistance. But gratitude is allowance. Desperation says, I don't have it. Gratitude says, it's already mine in some form and I honor that. That shift, from lack to abundance, from waiting to allowing, from control to trust, is where miracles begin. Because gratitude is the frequency of trust. Not blind faith. Not delusion. Trust. The quiet, unshakable knowing that life is not against you, that everything has meaning, that nothing is wasted. Even the pain. Even the delays. Even the things that broke you. Gratitude does not erase those experiences, it sanctifies them. It makes them part of your awakening. And so if you find yourself struggling to move forward, overwhelmed by what's missing, caught in the trance of not enough, do not wait for life to give you more. Sit still, breathe, and start speaking the truth of what already is. Not mechanically, not as a task, but as an act of power. Begin to thank the invisible. Begin to thank your own resilience. Begin to thank the version of you that never gave up. Begin to thank the moment you're in, no matter how imperfect, and watch as your internal state transforms. Because when it does, the external world will follow. Not always instantly, not always predictably, but always eventually. Because the universe does not respond to begging. It responds to belief. And there is no stronger belief than the one that says, I already have something to be grateful for. I already am something to be grateful for. I already am enough, and from that place I will create more. Chapter 8. Adaptability and the Evolution of Identity. Adaptability is not weakness. It is not compromise. It is not the abandonment of values or the forfeiting of vision. True adaptability is power, not the brittle, inflexible power of domination, but the liquid, unstoppable power of transformation. It is the power of the river that wears down the mountain. It is the power of the human spirit that reinvents itself in the face of collapse. It is what allows a person not just to survive change, but to alchemize it into momentum. In a world that never stops shifting, those who cling to fixed identities, fixed beliefs, fixed methods of being, they will fracture. They will break beneath the weight of reality. But those who are fluid, those who are willing to evolve, those who can bend without losing their essence, those are the ones who rise. There is a myth in our culture that identity is fixed, that who you are is some permanent, unchanging truth that must be discovered and protected at all costs. We are told, be yourself, as if that self is a static sculpture carved in stone, untouched by time. But this idea is not only false, it is dangerous, because it traps people in the cages of their own former selves. It convinces them that growth is betrayal, that change is hypocrisy, that reinvention is weakness. The truth is, identity is not something you find. Identity is something you create, and then recreate, again and again, as you outgrow the version of yourself you once needed to be. You are not meant to stay the same. The acorn is not a failed oak tree. The caterpillar is not betraying itself when it becomes a butterfly. Growth requires death, not physical death, but ego death, narrative death, the death of the identity that once served you but now suffocates you. And yet, most people fear this process. Because change threatens certainty. And humans are addicted to certainty, even when it's killing them. They would rather stay in the pain they know than face the possibility of transformation. But the price of that comfort is evolution. The price of refusing to adapt is irrelevance, not just to society, but to your own soul. Look at nature. The species that survive are not the strongest. They are the most adaptable. The same is true in business, in leadership, in personal development, in consciousness itself. Adaptability is not about reaction. It is about reinvention. It is about looking at the new conditions, the new landscape, the new information, and asking, who must I become now? Not who was I yesterday. Not who do people expect me to be. Not who makes others comfortable. But who is required to emerge in order to meet this moment with power? That question is not rhetorical. It is existential. Because every phase of your life will require a different version of you. The mindset that got you through your childhood will not carry you through leadership. The identity that kept you safe in a broken home will not help you thrive in freedom. The personality you crafted to gain acceptance in your peer group may be the very thing that keeps you from authentic alignment later in life. But people cling to these outdated versions of themselves, terrified to let go, because letting go feels like annihilation. And in a way it is. But it is also the prerequisite for rebirth. Adaptability requires self-awareness. You must be able to observe yourself from the outside. You must be willing to ask hard questions about your patterns, your habits, your reactions, and not just ask them, but actually listen to the answers. You must interrogate your own operating system and be brave enough to admit when it no longer serves you. This is not weakness. This is evolution. This is the exact process every innovator, every disruptor, every great thinker has gone through in silence. Not once, but continually. Because they understand, there is no final version. There is no arrival point. There is only iteration. And yet adaptability must be guided by principle. Without it, you become a chameleon with no spine, shifting to please, to survive, to blend in. That is not power. That is fear wearing the mask of flexibility. Real adaptability is rooted in vision. You know where you're going. You know what matters. But you are not rigid in how you get there. You are not attached to methods. You are not obsessed with being right. You are obsessed with becoming real. And to become real, you must be willing to burn the versions of yourself that no longer match the vision you hold. Consider the lives of those who reinvented themselves when the world was certain they were finished. Think of Abraham Lincoln, a failed businessman, a depressive, an unpopular politician by every metric. He lost more elections than he won. And yet, he allowed each loss to shape him, to carve him, to refine the character that would one day hold a nation together in its darkest hour. Or think of Oprah Winfrey, born into poverty, assaulted as a child, told by executives that she was too emotional for television. She did not conform. She adapted. She reinvented not only herself, but an entire medium around her authenticity. She became something no one expected, and in doing so, became undeniable. This is the hidden truth. Every reinvention begins with a disruption. Something breaks. A job ends. A relationship collapses. An identity falls apart. And in that rupture, you are given a choice: cling to what was, or surrender to what could be. Adaptability is not about surviving that moment. It is about mining it, studying it, listening to it. Because every breakdown contains the data for your breakthrough, if you're willing to evolve. But that willingness cannot be half-hearted. You must be ruthless about your growth. You must be willing to disappoint the version of you that made others comfortable. You must be willing to walk away from tribes that no longer reflect your truth. Adaptability is the highest form of intelligence, not IQ but existential intelligence. The ability to face new input, to digest it, to let it alter your structure without losing your essence. The river does not curse the boulder, it curves around it. The fire does not complain about the wind, it dances with it. And you, if you truly wish to thrive, must stop asking for the world to stay the same and start becoming the type of person who can transmute any environment into fuel. Let the world change. Let the old fall. Let the familiar die. You are not here to preserve your past. You are here to become something that didn't exist before you. You are here to evolve, to adapt, and to leave behind a trail of transformation so bold that no one can mistake the power of a human being fully awake to their own capacity for reinvention. Chapter 9. Resilience and the Warrior Mind. Resilience is not toughness. It is not about pretending you're unaffected by pain, nor is it about building emotional armor so thick that nothing touches you. Resilience is not numbness, not indifference, not denial. It is the sacred force within a person that chooses to rise when there is every reason to stay down. It is the defiance of despair. The willingness to continue breathing, moving, building, believing, even when the world has collapsed around you, even when the losses are fresh, even when your body aches from the weight of carrying your own survival. Resilience is not about avoiding the fall. It is about rising from it so completely that your scars become symbols of power, not weakness. A truly resilient mind is forged, not inherited. It is carved through adversity, refined through pressure, tested in silence. You do not become resilient by reading about it, by talking about it, or by wishing for it. You become resilient by enduring, by facing the thing that was supposed to destroy you and walking out of it more aware, more capable, more whole than you were before. Pain is the price of growth, and resilience is the muscle that allows you to bear that price without breaking. In a culture obsessed with comfort and instant gratification, resilience is a forgotten art. But make no mistake, if you want to master your life, you must become a student of suffering. The warrior mind does not reject pain. It studies it. It welcomes it as information, as initiation, as an invitation to a higher threshold of capacity. The resilient do not see setbacks as signs that something is wrong. They see them as the very path forward. Because once you stop resisting adversity and begin to integrate it into your evolution, you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming a master of reality. This is not just mindset. It is biology. The body adapts through stress. The muscle grows through tension. The immune system strengthens through exposure. The same is true for your spirit. If you are not tested, you cannot expand. Most people do everything in their power to avoid discomfort, and in doing so, they avoid transformation. They medicate, distract, delay, blame, anything to avoid feeling the full impact of what life is asking them to confront. But avoidance is a slow death. It kills possibility. It corrodes the soul. You do not heal by escaping your pain. You heal by walking through it with eyes wide open, by feeling it fully, by letting it shape you, not into something weaker, but into something that no longer fears the storm because it remembers being lightning. Look to those who endured the impossible and came back stronger. Think of Nelson Mandela, who spent nearly 3 decades in a prison cell designed to erase his identity. When he emerged, he did not return with vengeance. He returned with vision. That is resilience. Not just survival, but elevation. Or think of Helen Keller, deaf and blind from infancy, told by the world that she would amount to nothing. And yet, through sheer will and relentless commitment, she learned to read, to speak, to write, to inspire millions. That is not miracle. That is the warrior mind in motion. Resilience is not the absence of wounds. It is the decision to use those wounds as wisdom. It is the understanding that hardship is not the opposite of growth. It is the vehicle of growth. Every setback, every betrayal, every breakdown contains within it the raw material for reinvention. But only if you are willing to face it. Only if you are willing to say, "This is not where my story ends. This is where it begins again, with fire in my chest and resolve in my bones." You see, most people assume the warrior mind is about strength. It's not. It's about endurance. Not the loud, cinematic kind of endurance that gets applause, but the quiet, invisible kind. The kind that keeps getting out of bed when no one sees you. The kind that works in silence while others complain in public. The kind that builds in the dark so that one day, the world sees light where they once saw only ruin. This is the mind that reclaims power. The mind that takes responsibility not because it is easy, but because no one else is coming to save you. And that's the truth. No one is coming. Not your parents. Not your boss. Not your partner. Not society. It's you. It has always been you. And that realization either terrifies you or empowers you. And the difference is whether or not you've built the resilience to carry the weight of your own potential. Because potential is heavy. It demands sacrifice. It demands structure. It demands that you face the mirror without flinching and ask, "Am I doing what I said I would do?" And if the answer is no, then the resilient person does not collapse into shame. They simply begin again. No drama. No self-pity. Just adjustment. Just alignment. Just action. Understand this. You do not build resilience in theory. You build it by failing and trying again. You build it by being told no 1,000 times and still believing in your yes. You build it by standing in front of closed doors and kicking them open or building your own. And sometimes, yes, you build it by sitting in the rubble, letting yourself feel the full weight of grief, and still deciding to rise without bitterness. Resilience is not about pretending to be okay. It is about being honest, being raw, being human, and still choosing to move forward, scarred but sovereign. You must stop waiting for life to get easier. You must stop asking for fewer problems. You must stop praying for comfort. What you need is not ease. What you need is capacity. And capacity is built through resistance. Through trial. Through the choice to get stronger, not safer. That is the path of the resilient. That is the path of the warrior. And make no mistake, this world, this reality, this human experience will test you. It will shake you. It will bring you to your knees. And in that moment, you will decide, break or become unbreakable. So no, resilience is not just another motivational buzzword. It is a necessity. It is the core trait of those who do not just dream, but realize. Of those who do not just survive, but transcend. If you want to be one of them, then you must stop asking whether it's fair. Whether it's easy. Whether you deserve better. You must ask only this: what does this moment require of me? And then, without hesitation, you must become that version of yourself, again and again, until one day you look back and realize that every scar, every bruise, every tear was not the evidence of your failure, but the proof of your becoming. Chapter 10. Learning, Unlearning, and the Rewriting of Reality. Learning is not the accumulation of information. It is not the passive absorption of facts, nor is it the ability to recite what others have said. True learning is transformation. It is the rewiring of perception. the restructuring of the internal map through which you navigate reality. It is not about knowing more, it is about becoming more. And in that becoming, the world itself begins to shift. Because as you change, what you see changes. The world is not experienced objectively, it is experienced through the filter of your current level of awareness. And that awareness, that filter, is shaped entirely by what you've learned, and more importantly, what you've been willing to unlearn. The most dangerous thing in the world is not ignorance. It is certainty. Certainty in false ideas. Certainty in inherited beliefs. Certainty in stories that were implanted into your psyche before you had the ability to question them. These stories become the architecture of your life, quietly, invisibly, but completely. And unless you have the courage to challenge them, they will dictate every thought you think, every choice you make, every limit you accept. Most people are not living out their own truth. They are acting out someone else's script, someone else's fear, someone else's history, thinking it's their own voice when it's really just noise echoing from generations past. This is where unlearning begins. And unlearning is violent, not in the physical sense, but in the psychological one. Because it requires you to kill your illusions. It requires you to let go of beliefs that once gave you comfort, safety, identity. The beliefs that made sense when you were a child. When you were trying to survive. When you were taught to obey rather than think. Unlearning is the process of burning down the mental structures that no longer serve your evolution. It is a sacred destruction. The death of fiction. The beginning of freedom. Think about it. How much of what you believe about yourself, your worth, your capabilities, your place in the world, was taught to you before you had a choice? Who taught you what success means? Who defined beauty for you? Who decided what you were good at? Who convinced you that you had to fit in, perform, conform in order to be enough? These are not trivial questions. These are the root of your reality. Because beliefs are not just thoughts. They are frequencies. They are instructions. They are the blueprint upon which your entire life is constructed. And once you begin to understand this, not just intellectually, but viscerally, everything changes. Because you realize that your current reality is not a reflection of truth. It is a reflection of conditioning. And conditioning can be undone, rewritten, upgraded, but only if you are willing to do the hard, internal work of interrogation. You must become a detective of your own consciousness. Ruthless in questioning everything you've accepted as fact. Relentless in asking, who taught me this, and were they free? Because most of your early teachers were not free. They were bound by their own trauma, their own limitations, their own unconscious fear. And so they passed those chains to you, not out of malice, but because that's all they knew. And if you do not stop the cycle, you will pass it forward. Unconsciously, unintentionally, but completely. And that is the quiet tragedy of humanity, the endless repetition of suffering disguised as tradition. So what do? You learn. But not the way they taught you in school. Not memorization, not regurgitation. You learn by remembering. You remember who you were before the noise. You remember the intuition, the creativity, the fire you had before the world convinced you to shrink. And then you build. You read. You study. You immerse yourself in knowledge that expands, not constricts. You seek out ideas that make you uncomfortable. You challenge your biases. You surround yourself with people who don't just think like you, but who make you think. And as you do, you begin to evolve, not just in thought, but in identity. You begin to realize that learning is not something that happens in the mind. It is something that happens in your nervous system, in your behavior, in the way you react when triggered, in the way you respond when tested. You can recite every book ever written, but if your body still collapses under stress, if your emotions still rule you, if your self-sabotage patterns still repeat, then you have not yet learned. Because learning, real learning, changes your reactions. It upgrades your response. It rewrites the code you live by. But this kind of learning is never comfortable, because it will expose your blind spots. It will reveal the parts of you that are still governed by fear. It will shine a light on the beliefs you've clung to for safety, and it will ask you to release them, not with violence, but with awareness. This is the sacred responsibility of the awakened mind, to continually evolve, to continually upgrade the story, to continually expand your capacity for truth. Not absolute truth, but a deeper truth, a more conscious truth, one that is chosen, not inherited. And here lies the power, because once you realize that reality itself is not fixed, that it bends to the structure of your perception, you stop being a passive character and start becoming the author. You stop reacting and start designing. You stop playing roles that were never yours and begin writing the script of who you actually want to be. This is the point where learning and unlearning converge, where you release the outdated version of yourself and begin constructing the new one with precision, with intention, with integrity. It is no longer about what they told you was possible. It is about what you now decide is inevitable. You begin to use every moment, every conversation, every challenge, every relationship as material, as feedback, as insight. You begin to live as a conscious participant in your own becoming. And the more you learn, the more you realize how much there is to unlearn. How much of your life was based on assumptions. How much of your power was buried beneath narratives you didn't even choose. But now you choose. You wake up. You strip away the illusions. You refuse to carry beliefs that don't align with who you're becoming. And you rebuild. Day by day. Thought by thought. Habit by habit. Until one day you look back, and the version of you that once seemed permanent, the one built on fear, on doubt, on unconscious programming, is unrecognizable. Not because you erased your past, but because you rewrote your future. That is the hidden truth. That reality is not something you inherit. It is something you build. Not once, but over and over again, through what you learn, through what you unlearn, and through the decisions you make every single day about who you will be from this moment forward. Chapter 11. The Quantum Self, Energy, Intuition, and Inner Technology. You are not merely a body with thoughts. You are not a collection of cells animated by chance or some mechanical accident of biology. You are an electromagnetic being, an intelligent field of energy housed temporarily in a physical vessel. And when you begin to understand yourself at this level, not as concept, but as direct experience, everything changes. Because the moment you realize that you are not your thoughts, not your pain, not your history, not even your name, but rather the observer, the signal, the intelligence behind all of it, you gain access to a level of power that cannot be learned from books, only activated from within. This is not mysticism. This is physics. Your heart emits an electromagnetic field measurable up to several feet beyond your body. Your brain produces waves of energy that not only reflect your state of consciousness but influence the states of those around you. Every organ, every cell in your body is an oscillator, pulsing with frequency, emitting data into the field. This field is not separate from the world around you. It is part of the same quantum soup. You are constantly broadcasting. You are constantly receiving. Your body is not just a machine, it is a transmitter, a receiver, a biological antenna for something much greater than thought. This is the quantum self, the version of you that exists not as form, but as frequency. And the moment you begin to live from that identity, you stop chasing change and start becoming the change. Because you are no longer bound by the Newtonian model of reality, where everything is cause and effect, slow, physical, and linear. You are now operating in the quantum model, where intention is causality, where observation collapses probability, where your state determines the structure of your reality. In the old paradigm, we were taught that the mind controls the body, that thoughts are supreme. But the quantum self understands that mind is not just a tool of cognition, it is a field of resonance. Your emotions, your intuition, your energy, these are not secondary. They are primary. They are the signals that shape what you attract, what you allow, what you perceive. And most people are completely disconnected from this technology. They are stuck in loops of stress, fear, and survival, and then they wonder why their life reflects those very frequencies. But the quantum self does not react. It does not beg. It does not explain itself. It aligns. It knows that life is not happening to it, life is responding to it. And when you live from that truth, you stop asking the world for permission and start commanding your reality through coherence. Coherence, the alignment of heart, mind, emotion, and body. That is your natural state. That is the technology you were born with. And when you return to it, you remember what you are. Intuition is the language of the quantum self. It is the whisper beneath the noise, the knowing that does not need explanation, the sensation that bypasses logic but proves itself through time. Intuition is not emotional impulse. It is not wishful thinking. It is data, raw, direct, energetic information coming from your higher nervous system, from your field, from your expanded consciousness. The same intelligence that tells a flock of birds to turn mid-flight, the same force that pulls tides with the moon, lives in you. It is not separate from you. It is you, before thought, before language, before conditioning. But the world has trained you to ignore it, to dismiss it, to treat it as unreliable, to overthink, overanalyze, overplan, until you are completely out of sync with your inner guidance system. So you look outward. You seek answers, validation, direction, forgetting that the greatest GPS available to you was built into your system from the beginning. The quantum self does not seek guidance. It listens. And that listening is a skill, a practice, a reawakening. To access this inner technology, you must first create silence. Not external silence, internal. The stillness that comes when you separate from the narrative, the stream of thought, the endless monologue of judgment and doubt. This is where the ancient practices of meditation, breath work, visualization, now validated by science, become essential. Because they are not spiritual routines. They are tools of neurological recalibration. They shift you out of beta, out of stress, out of the identity of the thinking mind, and into delta, theta, gamma. The brainwave frequencies where your quantum intelligence begins to activate. And in those states, something miraculous happens. The body stops reacting to the past and begins preparing for the future. You begin to feel emotions not from what is, but from what could be. You begin to generate states, gratitude, love, wholeness, before the evidence arrives. And when you can do that, when you can embody the frequency of your desired future before it shows up, you collapse time. You pull that reality into your experience not through effort, but through alignment. This is how quantum creation works. Not through obsession, not through struggle, through vibrational congruence. You become the future version of yourself in advance. You feel the abundance before it appears. You radiate the energy of healing before the symptoms are gone. You show up as the leader before anyone follows. You love yourself as if the old wounds have already been integrated. That, as if, is not pretending. It is accessing. It is tuning into the version of you that already exists in the field, and drawing it into the now through resonance. This is not spiritual fluff. It is neurological, emotional, electromagnetic discipline. It is mastery over your state. Because in a quantum reality, you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. And what you are is the sum total of the energy you embody moment to moment. That energy is not abstract. It is practical. It determines your posture, your tone, your choices, your habits, your focus, your reactions. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be in tune. And the more often you return to coherence, the more often life meets you at that level. So stop living only from the head. Start living from the field. Reconnect with your nervous system. Reprogram your subconscious not through force, but through frequency. Use your attention deliberately. Use your intention like a sculptor uses a chisel. Stop identifying with thoughts that were never yours. Start breathing like someone who remembers they're alive. Wake up your cells with movement, with stillness, with presence. Learn to feel the future and act from it, not as fantasy, but as memory. Because at the highest level, the quantum self knows, time is not linear, reality is not fixed, and identity is not a sentence. You are not what happened to you. You are not the opinions projected onto you. You are not bound by biology, or history, or logic. You are a frequency. You are a portal. You are a consciousness capable of bending time, collapsing space, and reshaping reality through your will, your awareness, your alignment. And the moment you stop living like a disconnected machine and start operating as an integrated energetic being, the moment you return to coherence, to intuition, to your field, the universe, which has been waiting the entire time, begins to reflect that truth back to you in ways that are undeniable. Not because you begged for it, but because you finally remembered who you are. Chapter 12. The Grand Collapse of Illusion and the Rise of Conscious Humanity. There comes a moment, in the evolution of a person, in the evolution of a species, when the veil begins to disintegrate. Slowly at first, subtly, in flashes and glimpses, then suddenly, completely, as if the structure that once held the entire illusion together simply can no longer bear the weight of its own deception. And in that moment, something irreversible happens. Consciousness awakens to itself, not as idea, not as theory, but as undeniable experience. This is the moment where you no longer believe you are human trying to wake up. You realize you are awareness, pretending for a time to be human. The illusion begins to crumble at the point where you finally stop mistaking the mask for the face. Where you stop thinking the system is the source, and you understand it is only a stage, a temporary play, a collective hallucination built on agreement, money, status, nation, hierarchy, all illusions, sustained by mass participation. And suddenly you see it all for what it is. Not evil, not wrong, but limited. Tools that were useful for survival, for organization, for tribal belonging, but now, in this accelerated moment of planetary transition, becoming obsolete at the speed of thought. You begin to notice how everything you were taught to chase, the perfect job, the perfect body, the perfect partner, the perfect image, was never the point. That even when you got those things, the emptiness remained. Because what you were really seeking was not something outside of you. It was connection. To your source. To your truth. To the part of you that cannot be sold, packaged, or imitated. To consciousness itself, infinite, indivisible, awake. And in that moment of awakening, you stop seeking approval from a world that doesn't even understand itself. You stop fighting to be accepted into systems that were never designed to honor your fullness. You stop measuring your worth by metrics written by algorithms, enforced by culture, and maintained by fear. You step off the wheel of becoming, of comparison, of conditional worth, and for the first time, you just are. Enough. Not because you achieved it, but because you remembered it. This is the death of the illusion. And it is not gentle. Because to awaken is to die. To allow the false self, the persona, the ego, the constructed identity, to dissolve. And that dissolution feels like chaos. Like everything is falling apart. Like the ground is disappearing beneath your feet. Because it is. And it must. Because only through that collapse does the authentic self emerge. Not the curated version. Not the polished facade. But the raw, luminous essence of your being. The version of you that remembers before birth and will exist long after death. And as this personal collapse unfolds, something else happens. You begin to see the same collapse mirrored in the world. Institutions begin to shake. Systems begin to falter. The structures that once seemed eternal reveal their fragility. And it is tempting to panic, to resist, to cling to the old world. But if you've done the inner work, you will know, this is not the end. This is the beginning of a new epoch. This is the rise of conscious humanity. Not a utopia, not perfection, but a civilization built not on control, but on coherence. Not on domination, but on understanding. Not on fear, but on presence. Humanity is not falling apart. Humanity is waking up. And as with every awakening, there is disorientation. There is grief. There is loss. But beneath the noise, beneath the headlines, the outrage, the collapse of the old order, there is something stirring. A different rhythm. A quieter truth. A growing current of individuals who are choosing to live differently. Who are choosing consciousness over conditioning. Presence over performance. Purpose over programming. They are the new architects, not of buildings but of reality itself. These individuals are not waiting for governments to fix it. They are becoming sovereign within. They are not waiting for media to tell the truth. They are remembering how to feel what is real. They are not praying for someone to lead them. They are rising as leaders, not to rule, but to serve. They are mothers, artists, builders, rebels, scientists, mystics. They are students and elders and wanderers and visionaries. They come from all paths, all origins, all skins. And they share one thing in common: they are awake. This awakening is not a trend. It is not spiritual marketing. It is a return. A reconnection to the intelligence that has always lived within us. The same intelligence that guides the galaxies, that grows trees without asking how, that orchestrates the breath of life with every pulse of your heart. It is not separate from you. It is you. You are not a fragment. You are a fractal. And everything in your life, every loss, every heartbreak, every moment of despair, was part of the invitation to remember that truth. And now you stand at the edge of that remembering. The edge of the old world and the new one. One built on scarcity, division, competition, and one waiting to be born through your consciousness, through your vision, through your embodiment. And no one can cross that threshold for you. You must choose, not once, but daily, to see with new eyes, to speak from alignment, to act from wholeness, to love without fear, to create as if reality bends to your belief, because it does. So here we are, at the convergence of physics and mysticism, of mind and matter, of illusion and truth. The old world is dying, and the question is not, will you survive it? The question is, will you rise from it? Will you become the conscious creator you were born to be, not as an escape from the world, but as an answer to it? Will you remember that the power is not out there? It's in your breath, in your choice, in your frequency, in your ability to feel truth through silence more than noise. The age of unconscious survival is ending. The age of conscious evolution has begun. You are not here to repeat history. You are here to rewrite it, through your presence. You are not a product of your past. You are a portal to a future reality. You are not small. You are the entire cosmos, aware of itself, choosing to awaken in human form. And from that truth, you will create the new world.